Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Selma Bartholomew. I'm president of Legacy Pathways. Thank you so much for joining me today for our community conversations with our leaders in New York City and also nationally. Today to have a dynamic panel of guests here with us to share their expertise and their experience. We are here today to talk about family and community, a place and a part for everyone. And so I'm honored to have with me a dynamic panel. What I'd like to do first is let me introduce each panel member. We have with us Ms. Cynthia Williams from the Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline. We have Dr. Pepper Martin from Destiny House Christian. And we have Dr. Derek Skeet, an author and professor from Medgar Evers College. And so first I'm going to go to Mrs. Cynthia Williams and introduce her more formally, and then give her the chance to introduce herself to our community. So Ms. Williams, you are the co-director of the Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline. They are based in Harlem and do really great mission-driven work within the Harlem community. You're no stranger to family and community engagement. You work with PCAN, which is a Parent Engagement Action Network, over 40 years plus of experience. And when I asked her today where she grew up, because I grew up in Harlem, I thought she would say she grew up in Harlem as well. She said, no, I grew up in the Jim Crow South and have been in Harlem for several years. And I think that has absolutely informed and shaped her thinking. So Ms. Williams, turn it over to you to introduce yourself. And as you talk to our audience, tell us what community means to you.
Yeah, so thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. It is a pleasure, and I thank you. And I want to say hello to my fellow panelists. And like Dr. B just said, my background is from the South. I'm much older than I look, at least I think. I think I am. But I was born in South Carolina during the tail end of Jim Crow and got to witness a lot of inequities and injustices throughout my life. And it really has shaped the person that I have become on fighting for being able to work for Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline really is a combination of years and years of doing advocacy work for parents and for the education system. And it's just a perfect position for me. I love my organization. I love my colleagues. And I'm just grateful to be here. And for me, community means a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging, having common values, spiritual and emotional connections, and family, first and foremost. And it means identifying with people with strength, who are authentic and resilient, which so many of our people are. And for working with people and organizations on the front lines, putting our minds and our bodies on the line for doing what's right. And finally, I think community to me means living with people who believe there is a higher power that's guiding all of us and being a part of that. So yeah, that's what community means to me.
Thank you so much. And for those who don't know, you can find Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline at hrepinc.org. And your co-director, Dr. Sandy Johnson, is a dear colleague, and we appreciate our partnership with her. Our next panelist, Dr. Pepper Martin, leads the Destiny House Christian Center. They're at 70 North Main Street in Freeport, and she is a dynamic leader and speaker and faith leader. She also has a history, if I'm correct, you worked with Pastor Donnie McClurkin. Kudos to you, and we thank you for your leadership. I also want to give a special shout out to your husband, who I'm told is a retired firefighter, but served in both World Trade Center bombings.
Wow.
So please tell him thank you so much for his service, and we extend our love to him. So let me let Dr. Martin introduce herself and her work, and tell us what community means to you, Dr. Martin.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Bartholomew, for having me as one of the panelists. And I loved what Dr. Williams said, spoke to my heart. We share, I would say, similar definitions of what community is. I am the senior pastor of the Destiny House Christian Center. We just a few weeks ago, just passed our 5-year mark. We're a new ministry in the Freeport community, and we've just 2 weeks ago celebrated 5 years as a church. And so that was a tremendous feat, and I give glory to God, and I thank God for the people that He has sent to help me undergird this mission. I am also an educator. I'm a former administrator in the New York City Department of Education, and upon meeting my husband, as you've mentioned, when I met him, he already had a lung condition, and in the first year of our marriage, both of us, this is our second marriage for both of us. And in the first year of our relationship, unfortunately, he was in a chronic car accident, which crushed the nerve surrounding his one working lung and subsequently put a breach in my career. I had to become his caretaker for 4 years. And so I'm starting over now that he's back and up and running, thank God. I'm starting over as an educator in Long Island. In between all of that, I've been blessed to serve as the site supervisor for Grand Canyon University. And so now as a pastor, I feel I've been blessed whereby I am now able and currently working on some initiatives through my church to integrate not just my experience, but a number of lessons with spiritual principles to help reach the members of my community that I immediately serve, but also for mission work that goes beyond Freeport, goes beyond Long Island. I was born and raised in the Bronx. I was educated at St. John's University and then later on pursued my graduate education at Long Island University. And as a native of New York City, unfortunately, though I did not grow up in the South like Dr. Williams, I too encountered so much discrimination in a different way, I think, but it's so compelling where people talk about the North being free. Oh, Lord. So we'll get into that. But as a result of my experience and upbringing and current position, what community means to me is basically having a place of safety and what people considers to be family and connectivity. It's different than what used to be considered traditional, but whatever it is, it's necessary, and where people feel safe and have common goals, common objectives, common practices. That's for me rooted in biblical teaching and in God's word. Community, once that is achieved, that is what community represents to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your story. It's important that we have a chance to connect, right? I think everyone has this sense, yes, we're all in it together, but our personal stories does matter, and it matters to inspire, and it matters to give us hope. So thank you so much for sharing. Our next panelist I'm honored to introduce is Dr. Derek Skeet. Dr. Skeet is a full professor at Medgar Evers College. He is a STEM professor and leads science and technology and engineering and mathematics. And honored also, most people don't have the chance to say that they've actually been in the NASA building and actually have had a chance to say that they have, have the opportunity to be part of such a thinking space and thinking mind. So for your students at Medgar Evers College and for all of the students who connect with you, what an inspiration, what a role model for our students and for our community. And I'm honored also because I get the opportunity to work with him as part of our team at Legacy Pathways. He has a new book out, and I want him to share a little bit about his new book and dealing with self-doubt. It's available on Amazon. You can look up Dr. Derek Skeet. And I'm honored to have him introduce himself. And so Dr. Skeet, tell us what community means to you as you introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. I want to say good afternoon and welcome to my fellow panelists, and thank you for that wonderful, I know I paid you for that, to give me that introduction. Thank you. So I'm Derek Skeet. I'm a professor at Medgar College. I've been teaching there for over 20 years now. Originally, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I came to the United States in 1987 when I was 20 years of age. And of course, I sort of worked my way through the system from doing menial jobs to where I am today. And I'm happy for the opportunity that I had in terms of what I did in the early days, because it helped me to become who I am. It helped to mold me. In fact, it was part of my community that really helped me to be who I am today. So when I think in terms of community, I think in terms of a friendly association, which is supposed to be a friendly association of individuals who, as some of my panelists rightly said, share common interests and goals. And as a result of us having this friendly association, we have an opportunity with which we can build from. And I mean, I would say from growing up as a young man, we had that extension of the community outside of the home. And of course, it helped us because we were always vigilant of the things that we do and the things that we say outside of the home, because we do recognize that we had a community that extends itself. Now, what I've seen as time transpires in today's society is that we do have pockets of community, but some of the values are somewhat lost. And as a result of that, now people have these communities, but the communities may not necessarily have leaders. And as a result of that, the communities not having leaders, in some cases, they may be driven down a path that may not necessarily be guided.
Thank you. Thank you. Hold on.
Elevation, opportunity, friendly association, common and share, where individuals have an opportunity to build and elevate themselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Skeet. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I want to ask a question in terms of mission. And so each of you have this personal mission as well as organizational mission that you are engaged in. And we know that these are very challenging times without any question, right? We see the news, we see what's happening in Minneapolis, we see what's happening in our own community. So I first want to ask, has your mission changed in any way? And if so, right, what direction are you now moving into this new world and into this new space? If not, then how have you how are you rethinking or thinking about your work and as you serve community? And each of you are in different communities, which is what's really important to me as we think about this conversation today. I want to start with Dr. Martin, if you don't mind. So tell us, how is community, your mission as you work with your community? Has it changed, or has it, are you continuing on the same path?
Well, I would say that the mission itself for me hasn't changed. The method of execution has changed. And subsequently, I think, for obvious reasons, and in order to stay relevant and to continue to understand it from a spiritual perspective, I'm still being held accountable. And so we still have to get the job done. And that includes feeding people spiritually, as well as how that is shown through outreach and pastoral care. And so because I am also an educator, I have now found that a lot of my educational strategies that I've used in the classroom when I was a teacher, as well as a counselor and an administrator, I am now forced to really, I would say, take a whole different approach to the use of data. And utilizing data to help guide a lot of my current initiatives from a church's perspective. And so just today, just something simple, like my assistant, Pastor Brown, asking, Pastor, do we have any additional announcements, just to give you the concrete example. And I said, no, but next week we will, and we will be adding a prayer slide for Minneapolis and the Floyd family. So why was that a significant, though it may seem small, to me it's not, because the mission now, at least for me, has got to incorporate civic action from a spiritual leader so that we can deal with the values that Dr. Skeeth dealt with in his introduction, and some of the experiences that all of us, I'm sure, have encountered. And now, from my perspective, what does God have to say about my position, and what is my leadership role in taking a stand against actions and behaviors that are against what God intended for us to participate in. And so the mission now has become more eclectic, it's becoming deep, and it is requiring that we put some real transactional methods to our transformational leadership to move the needle on very specific things within the community, locally, as well as on a national and global level.
Yeah. I'm so happy you said that word, transformational leadership. It's transformations. We use that word so much, and I think for so many people it's rhetoric, but you hit it right, it is methods. And transformation says you have to find what is going to move you from point A to point B. And during these challenges, right, we had challenges as a community, as within our communities before this, and they've really become more glaring. And the notion of the disparities that exist are so real. So that idea of methods is something I really want those of us who are listening to go back and really look at your methods, as Dr. Martin suggested, and think about how are you going to now impact and reach your mission. Sister Williams, if you can share a little bit, how has in any way the mission of HREP, has it changed, and how are you thinking about your work as an organization?
Right. So no, our method of operating have not changed. We are a collective impact model, and we work in partnership with partners. Can you hear me? Okay, because I could. Okay, and but while our efforts have been solely on the education system, working with Community District 5 to improve outcomes around education, the need came up for a response for support for resources with the parents. And using our partnership strategy, we were able to organize our partners in responding to the resources that families were requesting. And so we were able to add an additional partner to our organization just to address the COVID response. And that's around a pantry. Families needed food. Family needed household products. Family needed tech support. And so we were able to gather all our partners together to address those issues and work on something outside of education, but at the same time, really alerting us, or I would say alarming us, to the fact that all of it goes together. The education and what families and community needs is all one. So our, again, we did not shift the way we operate, but we directed the attention to the resources that families and community needed instead of just focusing on educational outcomes.
And for those who don't know, HREP is in Harlem, and their mission is Harlem. And so
it is.
They're very intentional about Harlem. I grew up in the Harlem community. It is absolutely needed after years in terms of schooling, and to be able to change the educational outcomes, the notion of not just parent awareness. A lot of people do awareness, but true parent engagement is very different.
Exactly right.
Taking that pulse, as Dr. Martin mentioned, the use of data, knowing what your parents need and what our families need is really different. And as we think about this COVID-19 space that we're in, for example, it's certainly impacted all age groups. And initially, when it was saying grandparents, our grandparents are surrogate moms and surrogate dads in a lot of
right.
And so they're absolutely feeling it. And we're in homes where the square feet doesn't allow you to take a guest bedroom.
That's exactly right.
House. So it's so important to think about the data and who are our families and who are our communities. And so thank you very much. Dr. Skeet, who works tirelessly with young people and all age groups, but really very intentional with your work with young people. What do you think now in terms of mission and in light of COVID-19?
Well, I would say mission hasn't changed. Mission is just the same. It's just the message, as some of my colleagues rightly said. And one point I try to get over to most people is that this is not the time where we're going to try to settle scores.
Correct.
Simply because we have to be able to put aside our differences and begin to work together. And that has been our Achilles heel in a number of ways, because in our community, there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of pain that we're dealing with because of issues. We become numb to things like police brutality that we see taking place all around us all the time. And it's like, we don't seem to get any answers because we think that the courts are in place to at least render some sort of justice. And 9.9 out of 10 times is either the district attorney put forth a weak case, so the grand jury does not come forth with an indictment, or in event, even if they go to court, it so happens then that a weak case again is put forth and the outcome happens to be just a slap of wrist. So we become somewhat, at the same time, with the outcome of COVID now, you find then that people just close in the same place. And of course, there's a lot of abuse. Domestic violence is on the rise. I mean, I'm not sure the data, the specific data says in African American, Hispanic, and other households, but I really and truly don't want to know what it's about. Now, again, we also have issues of unemployment, underemployment, as in some cases, people are just very qualified, but just don't seem to get the jobs. At the same time, we have what I see is a lack of community. And we need to really get back into this space where we have that community, because the community is a building block for all that we do. We need more support mechanisms to help us, simply because if we don't have those support mechanisms, we resort to substances. And the substances, illegal substances, otherwise, we end up taking it and it just makes matters worse. So what do we need in our communities? We need community support groups, which I think is of paramount importance for all that we do. We need a Young Fathers Club. And this Young Fathers Club could be for young fathers or individuals who are not even fathers, where they're being guided and mentored by men who have the experience and can help them to understand their role. Because what we have seen in a number of cases is that men abdicating their responsibility. And as a result of them abdicating their responsibility, it leads to a lot of anger and angst by some of the young men who feel abandoned by the very individuals who bore them and who just unfortunately did not fulfill their roles. We need a Young Mothers Club as well, not only Young Fathers Club. We need a Young Mothers Club, so then that young girls could actually see what it's like to be a young woman, what it's like to be respectful of self, instead of just twerking, showing yourself twerking in a video and looking for likes and
Dr.
media. Get a book, sit and read. You understand? Having these young mothers group as well as young fathers group in our community.
Excellent. I said your connection is a little off, so I may have to have you circle back. If you can hear me, okay.
I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Excellent. So Dr. Ski talked about having a Young Fathers, a Young Mothers Club, and being more intentional as we engage our youth. As I think about this work, as a company, we've been engaged in more than 10 years now, 12 years, working directly with schools, with our leaders and with our teachers. And our mission is really about ending the social reproduction of failure. And how I describe that is, how do you get working class kids to only want working class jobs, right? You don't show them leaders, you don't show them who they are. So community really matters, but because we need leaders and we need to really commit to developing our young people as leaders within our community and giving them voice. There's no shortage of work. There's no shortage of work right now. So I'm hopeful that, you know, this is our opportunity to really come together and to think about the nature of how do we develop our students as leaders within our community and to become more intentional about this conversation. Dr. Martin, you want to comment before I do a next question or regarding what Dr. Skeet said around young mothers and young fathers? I know you do a lot of work in your church community, you know, with all groups and as the leader of a dynamic community. Can you share a little bit about what you've been engaged with your young women and young men?
Oh, I had to fight to contain myself because when he was speaking, I was like, Dr. Skeet! Dr. Skeet!
Yes!
Oh my God, Rebecca, thank you for this man. Well, first, to basically connect and to expand on what he says, it was so pertinent. My belly was leaping. We have a men's group called MOD, Men of Destiny, and where we have a person in common, Deacon-elect Michael Anderson, who is the head of our men's department. And we have monthly community sessions, interactive sessions, where the men come together and meet to talk exactly in a place of safety, where it's not a Bible class, while God's principles are discussed in a concrete way, in a relevant way, but in a way where people can now see, how can I get this to work with my situation? What does the Word of God say about me having now a record and I can't get a job and I need to get reestablished as the head of my house, as a leader in my community? And so what the men in my church have now done is taken a part of the vision and run with it, to put legs on it, to create a safe and pleasant and loving environment where they talk and they cry and they pray and they come out with real concrete solutions and next steps of action as to how to do exactly what Dr. Skeet was talking about. My husband is involved in fathers.com, whereby we know so many men and women have grown up without fathers. And we are seeing a disconnect in the community. And by having that absent person, or by having just a man in the household, but yet still there was no fathership. There was a person that was masculine, but just was present. And so whatever the reason is for the absence of good fathering, as well as in general good parenting, we have people, not just young people, men and women in their 40s and 50s and older, that's still searching for something in their soulish realm that's now coming out in other aspects of their life. And it goes back to this gaping hole of not feeling loved, not feeling mentored, and then not getting answers, where they're an adult on paper, but there is a childlike quality that never got a chance to be developed. And so these are things from a social and a spiritual perspective that is handled and dealt with quite skillfully in our monthly meetings, both for my church as well as the organization that we partner with called fathers.com. The Men of Destiny have been strategic. Just a week before the pandemic, we just started Women of Destiny, and Women of Destiny will be dealing with women who have been broken as a result of abuse, particularly focusing on providing healing for those who have been raped as well as sexually abused. And we are dealing with those who are public successes, but private messes. And so how do you get those gaping holes in your soul that's now causing significant problems in other areas of your life? You may be successful in your career, but the rest of your life is a mess. And from a spiritual perspective, God wants balance. And so these are just some of the initiatives that we have actively going in the community so that we can have some real outcomes and take us to a different place.
Thank you so much, because what you're speaking to is healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that you mentioned the fact that, yeah, we are adults on paper,
Mm-hmm.
hurt. You
Yep.
can't help someone else, right?
That's
when
correct.
you're experiencing hurt. And as we work with schools, our children bring that trauma in.
Yes.
And, we make assumptions, right? We see
Right.
them sometimes. We
Yep.
see a 13-year-old, they've got a bigger body, and they're
Mhm.
treated like adults, but in
Right.
reality, they're still a child and childlike spirit. And so
Yep.
when adults are hurt, then how can you possibly, I like the idea, put on your ear mask. I can't put on my ear mask, right? If
Right.
help my child. And so it makes such a difference. And I thank you for mentioning the word love. So Sister Williams, talk to us about this question of how do we rethink parents, and what is it that they need now to reimagine their role And I know you also want to comment on this. I saw you also speaking of fatherland.
Yes, 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 yes.
And also,
Dr. Skeet set it off.
he really did. And I thank him for that, right? That authentic voice of being honest
Yeah.
about the fact that
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to just touch a little bit on the healing part. And so I feel that there's so much trauma, as you just said, there's post-traumatic stress that all of us as a people and a community is going through. And it didn't just start now. And I think in order for us to heal, we have to stop the bleeding, right? We have to know why. We have to go back to the motherland and understand what kind of people that we come from. I think that our families and our young people don't have a clue. And until we actually find a way to help them understand who we are as a people, why they are our people go through the things that we go through in this country, why we have a system that is designed and have always been designed to keep us at the bottom of everything. And so whether it's about stepping up and taking the role of father, or stepping up and taking the role of mother, or how they always say that our kids do the worst in school, our people are always on the lowest totem pole in jobs, but we have a system that was designed for that to happen, and for us to understand that and to come together as a people to begin to understand how we can dismantle that system. I mean, use the parts that work for us, but really organize ourselves, collaborate, and find the truth and find ways that we can begin to dismantle the systems that are hurting us. Mm-hmm. And doing programming like Dr. Martin just talked about, like Dr. Steve talking about, are excellent ways that we can begin to change our outcomes based off of this systemic inequities that goes on. For HREP and our parent group, we have a parent engagement collaborative action network, where right now we're working with District 5 administration on equity. And in equity, it is a place where we can really examine all of the systems and how they have been ineffective, how they have hurt our people to the core, and figure out ways of, again, dismantling that system and bringing on a system that is going to be fair and just and equitable to all of us, that works for everyone and not just a few.
Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing in that word of equity. I think this season has me really wrestling with it that word and that concept on a personal level and on a professional level. Mm-hmm. As we see what is happening across the country. Certainly we had the wave of the 60s when it was about justice and social justice, and we have this word. We work nationally, not just within the Harlem community and in New York. We're in Baltimore, worked in Bismarck. And I think we've got to also start to think about the fact that education across this country has flatlined.
Yes.
Shine a lot of light within, urban communities. We talk a lot of deficiency data when it comes to Black and brown children. There's so much deficiencies. But if we really see what's happening, there's a flatlining of education, right? If you can't, have people making good decisions around science and understanding science, if you can't necessarily be able to now communicate anymore, right? There's so much of a divisiveness. So it says that, there's a flatlining, I believe, of education. And so I want to be able to, as we think about this challenge and we move forward, we as a community, people know pain. And I'm mindful of Winnie Mandela's word, and she said, there isn't any pain I haven't felt. Mm-hmm. I could not imagine that when I heard that word, there isn't any pain I have not felt. And
wow.
certainly as a mom of a son of color, when Dr. Skeet was speaking to fathers, yeah, you pray on your child before they leave the house because there's so many threats on them. And so as
Yeah.
we imagine this work and we imagine a place for everyone, a place where people can be re-engaged, I think that this is a unique opportunity for us to become more intentional about the work, speaking
Yep.
about love, about
Absolutely.
healing, because right there we're in a level of pain, and if you can't heal, then we won't be able to move forward. And you
That's
know,
right.
it becomes hotter and it becomes more uncomfortable. But really, you have to begin to heal. If you think about in terms of resources, do you feel like if you're getting the resources you need, Dr. Martin, is there something that our elected officials? This is an election year. And I think it's important to people to know that that economic power without electoral power is no power at all.
That's right.
Saying that this is an election year, we have almost 63 seats up in New York. So is that something that you need? Is that something that you want our elected officials and our community members to truly begin to advocate for you as you think about your community, Dr. Martin, because you're right there on the ground. So what do you see as a need that we need to now focus on?
Well, there is definitely a tremendous need for some of the same issues that's going on within the 5 boroughs. And I think that the downside of being in Nassau County and Long Island in general is that the image works against us. And the image of Long Island residents is that because we are predominantly middle and upper middle class neighborhoods, that we don't have populations, and we don't have populations in large numbers that are greatly and grossly underserved. And that is just not the case. And in me being not just a resident of New York City, but an educator in the city of New York, while there were systemic issues for all types of inequities that we saw, the difference was that there was an expectation that because we're in an urban environment that it was there. However, I'm seeing many cases as far worse than what I have encountered within the 5 boroughs. And I myself personally encountering this am shocked at how well covered that this has been. And so one of the things that we need, I don't know if it's a concrete resource, but I think the image issue of, and the residents, in my opinion, work against themselves by constantly participating in the system, even though they don't realize it, and working strategically to conceal their real and authentic problems. They become a co-conspirator to those that are oppressing the underserved by hiding it. And so we need programs that are designed for Nassau and Suffolk County to speak their language and to help to break or to penetrate a level of social consciousness where they can understand and be empowered that by concealing this issue, that they are in fact hurting themselves. We need awareness programs. We need people to understand why their children need to vote, why they need to speak up, why they need to become public when there have been tremendous examples of inequities and so many disparaging issues in every sense of the word. And what, from an educational perspective and as a woman of God, I am outraged. And I, like you, Dr. B, often feel conflicted between my ethics and my profession. And so I am seeing with great skill and intentionality a real movement to that has skillfully divided communities, where in Nassau County alone, if you go 5 blocks, you leave Hempstead and are in Garden City. There is literally only a 5-block radius between the two. How can that be? How can there be such a huge disparity in income, in educational services? And there are things that I know, particularly being certified in special education, that's illegal. that
Yes.
would never fly in the city, but
Mm.
is a part of the culture and the fabric within Long Island and Long Island schools, from hiring practices to how certain services are rendered. And so one of the things that I think by having some freedom and being fluid as a spiritual leader, but still having the knowledge, I think that since churches are still valued in my community as a presence, I think that some of the resources could run through some of the houses of worship to make a difference in empowering our youth and their families, to improve family and social engagement, to improve achievement gaps, and to deal with the social constructs of empowering people to help change the value system. And by having those kinds of resources to really be on the cutting edge of innovation, to now just come out and say, we can no longer say the separation of church and state, at least from what I'm seeing, because without it coming together in some way, we will not really be able to sustain whatever initiatives we create. And so I would like to see or have a platform with elected officials to basically say some of the things that have been funded clearly haven't worked, but the attitude of nepotism and you continue to fund it to basically field your own agenda is hurting everyone. That has to stop. We need to be eclectic. We need to be forward thinkers. And we need to look at now developing funds that could empower also the church community along with other forms of nonprofits, so that we can be sustained to be able to render those services, as well as seeing spiritual services as essential. I know I have been working tirelessly in not just rendering the gospel. So many people have died. I have been stretched in both capacities. It's been overwhelming. And yet there are businesses and there are nonprofits now being able to get grants and to be basically sustained financially by the federal government, whereas the church community was never considered for this. Yet people are running to people like me first for answers, and we're giving spiritual answers. But if we can't sustain our ministries, how will we be able? There is an administrative aspect to even running a church. So while from a spiritual perspective in closing, the church is still operating, the building is closed, in order to give concrete services like food pantries and this men's initiative and the women's initiative, and basically just to be able to have a clear head to render comfort for pastoral care and chaplaincy services. We need finances, and we need those types of services to be considered with equity, to be considered serious, because it does provide a tremendous need of healing, which speaks to some of the things that my colleagues on the panel have already alluded to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Yeah, I'm chairing as well, and you said that so eloquently. You are so right. I am a Black-owned business, and this is the fight, that we don't get the dollars and the money is being siphoned off to other institutions. And we need now to begin to fund long-standing institutions within our community, faith-based organizations, nonprofit, as well as businesses who have a commitment to the mission. And you're absolutely right. Where do we go to first? We go to our faith-based, we go to Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline. We go to individuals who we trust, who we think, right? Who always make a way. And that's what we have always done as a community. We make a way, but we need now to put the pressure on our elected officials to say that the projects, right, that they're keeping us in this reliance around just enough cash to survive is not working, and we want the dollars. And I think we have to hold them accountable, because they don't feel comfortable going out on a limb asking for the money for our community, and asking for the money even for our children and for our families. In New York State, they had the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. That money has not really touched our classrooms.
That's right.
Out there. So the fight is very real. I'm going to turn it to Dr. Skeet. Talk to us a little bit about what do you see, needing by way of resources and an ask at that elected official level within our communities.
Before I answer that question, there's something I wanted to say
Sure,
based on the
absolutely.
previous question that you had asked. And one thing I do find that is happening in our community is the fact then that we've somewhat devalued education. And
Yep.
before we had placed intrinsic value on education, now education gets maybe a second or third shelf before we take a look and really see and not recognizing then that that can become the great equalizer, that can become the change in our environment.
Yep.
And as a result of us devaluing education, what has happened is that we tend to have this imposter syndrome. We feel as though we don't belong. So we go places because we may not have the background or the platform with which to start from. We tend to figure, well, I'm afraid to even speak to my child's teacher because I don't know what to say to them because they're supposedly educators, they're supposedly educated, and I don't know what to say to them. So we have to get out of that mindset, and hence the reason why I wrote the book, Breaking the Chains of Self-Doubt, because essentially what it's about is really about sort of telling my stories, a reflection on experiences and accomplishment, and at the same time seeking to motivate the readers to aspire them to greatness, to recognize then that as they begin to build on their plan for success, they should allow nothing to stop them. So some of the topics in the book is like, see yourself as a masterpiece. You have what it takes. The role of fathers, which is very important, life challenges, living life challenges. So all of that encompasses in that book as a way of helping people to break that doubt, because the doubt is what is hindering us. The doubt is what is allowing us to just remain stymied and believing then that we don't have what it takes. And when we truly do have what it takes. Now, with respect to the politicians, I would say then that, and I'm going to say something that's very, very, it could be controversial, but we need representation. Too many
Yep.
of those individuals who are in office
Correct.
and they come to us to get our and they don't represent us.
Yes.
They turn backs on us.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
need
Absolutely.
representation,
Yes.
representation of
Yep.
our issues, representation of what we face with, because it behooves me that we have elected officials who supposedly represent us on federal, state, and city level, but yet still in our communities we're not getting the resources. And
Right.
in some communities right adjacent to ours, they have loads of resources. Why is
Yep.
that happening? Because of the lack of representation.
That's
Our
correct.
elected officials, unfortunately, are taking us for granted.
That's
The
Yep.
right.
time has come where we have to say enough is enough, and we
That's
cannot allow this happen anymore.
yes,
We need
sir.
resources in our
Absolutely.
communities. Our elected officials,
Yes.
I mean, they're open to the same resources that everyone else has. But if they're not representing us, they would not seek those resources, they would not need those resources into our communities. And unless we hold them accountable and not just to
Mm-hmm.
come and smile with us and shake our hands and kiss babies when they're
Nope.
campaigning, but to hold them accountable. What are you doing for us? How are you representing us? If you're not representing us, this is our 3-point plan in our community. If that cannot happen, we're not going to support you. We have a
That's
voting block.
right.
And
There you
until we
go.
can organize ourselves as a community and hold our elected officials accountable, we are going to be subjected to the same level of deprivation, the same
Yep.
level of abandonment, and we have
Yep.
to put a stop to that.
Yes.
Dr.
Absolutely.
Bartholomew, may I interject something here?
Absolutely. And it's Dr. B or Selma.
Dr. B, Dr. B, if Dr. Skeet had said this on a Sunday morning, first of all, the organ would have been going, the people would have been shouting, sir, I feel like lifting an offering.
Keep it authentic. This is
What?
what
I just want to say, what you say.
Yes. Amen.
There's a scripture that encapsulates everything that he said so eloquently. And so a man thinketh, so is he. And so we have to begin to deal with how we value and see ourselves, because long stemming social perceptions that have been infiltrated in our spirit, many of us have adopted and adapted to the expectations of how other people view us, we believe.
That's right.
And we bought into it, and we are living beneath our privilege. And we don't make these demands, and we think that we're crazy for feeling the things that we are feeling. We have been victimized, but I decree and declare that that spirit of victimization has got to go, and that we are in a new season. And I want to take advantage of going into this new normal while our minds are open and our spirits are open to pray, and then to support it with educational initiatives that includes moral education, ethical values, and self-awareness, so that we can see ourselves as leaders. You may not be famous, but it doesn't mean you're not great. And God has deposited greatness in all of us. And it may be to a degree, but still you can achieve it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ski. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. This is Sister Williams. I see you saying yes, so I'm going to give you.
Amen. 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 That's it. They said it.
Okay. I'm certainly mindful of the time for those of us out there. We absolutely will share this video. I'm not sure if we were able to actually connect live, but that's okay. We are recording it, and we will make it available to the members of our community. As I think about this work, and you are so right, Dr. Ski, Dr. Martin, to all the members of the panel, it is a mindset, right? It is a shift in mindset. And also the fact that we're not seeing ourselves, and we're not seeing how we are championing ourselves. We work with schools. Our children do a phenomenal job every single day. A lot of them work. They work 2 jobs. They're stepping in right now for parents who may not be feeling well, and and they do laundry, and they do so many things, but still no one is empowering them with that mindset of greatness and letting them know that they have that potential, right? That they have to mind their passion and mind their purpose. So I thank you so much for really honing to that. I'm mindful of the time, and I want to get to another big idea in terms of family and community, a place for everyone. We've talked already about some of the disparities. We talked about mindset. We talked about this role and important role of our fathers and of our mothers. And we've also talked about healing and really giving attention to healing. I want to point out, though, that in so many of our communities, when we are suffering, it's kind of like you're constantly being told, go ahead, girl, just push through it. Yes. It's going to be all right. You just need to, just get over it. Why can't you get over it? I got over it quickly. And I don't see that as the case. I truly believe in this notion of compassion. It is a word that I absolutely have embraced at this stage in my life. And I think we have to deal with our pain before we can help others. And when we think about mental illness, when we think about the issues, right, of when Dr. Ski mentioned the domestic violence and those things, what do we see in terms of really helping our families and our communities heal now? What would you say is the one advice for those listening? If you're working with a child, if you're a parent right now listening, if you're a principal, if you're a teacher, if you're a mom, if you just have somebody who's a neighbor, and even for yourself and you're going through pain right now, what advice might we give just to be able to say, how can we help you heal? What are the things that person may want to do? Just one thing you may offer to the members of our community and those connected with us right now. Let me go to Sister Williams. What do you feel?
Yeah, so this pandemic really has heightened my anxiety about, what could happen. I'm in a very small apartment with my daughter and my grandkids. And if anything were to happen to me, or either them, we can't self-isolate. So that had weighed really heavy on my mind. And so I actually downloaded the app, the CALM, C-A-L-M app. And it helps you with meditation, with spirituality, with so many different techniques you can use to calm your anxiety. And it really has worked for me. And I have told my family about it. Other than, spiritual, doing your praying and knowing that, God has you, but on the surface, I needed something for my anxiety. And so the Calm app really works for me. And reading all kinds of things about anxiety, getting away from the news. The news really heightens the anxiety in folks. So I watch it maybe once a day to kind of hear, I guess, Governor Cuomo give the update, and that's it for me. And just keeping myself busy with work, and hugging my family. I'm with them. I'm hugging them. So my advice, and those who I can't talk to, I Zoom, conversations with them, or I call them every day. So, that has helped me as a person who suffering with anxiety during this pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. I'm going to go to you, Dr. Skeet.
I would say individuals need to re-examine themselves and find their centeredness. Because quite often, we allow ourselves to become caught up with all that's happening around us and not recognizing that we have control over what is happening. So I would say re-examine yourself, find your centeredness. And at the same time, I also stand strong. Do not allow anything or anyone to stand in the gateway of your success. And at the same time, continue to believe in oneself and take advantage of every opportunity that comes one's way, and to continue to learn new things. Because during this period here, we should take advantage and try to learn as much as we can, because if this becomes the new normal, the question is, where do we want to see ourselves when we come out of this pandemic, right? So learn new things, re-examine yourself, becoming a better you. Some of the ways in which individuals opportunity to really build, be ready by the time this pandemic is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Skeet. Dr. Martin?
I would say quickly PPE, pray, prepare, and educate.
Okay.
And I would leave this scripture, Psalms 91, verse 11 and 12, for he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Throughout this entire process, though it's filled with degradation, damnation, and disease, God is still in control. And we have to now stand on that, not based on emotions, but based on faith. Faith requires courage, and this is the season where we must be deliberate about doing things that will now exemplify courage, so that we can stay encouraged, stay calm, and what we cannot control, leave it to God. How do we do that? By continuing to follow the PPE system. Pray, prepare, and continue to educate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams and Dr. Skeet. I absolutely agree with all of those strategies as an educator, as a mom, and working with leaders, working with our families. It's important to have strategies. It's important to be able to pray, to be able to feel prepared, to be courageous. I want to say to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. I know I didn't get a chance to get to questions. We had a little bit of technical issues with our YouTube. It will be available on the Dr. Selma B channel and on our website as well. This is an ongoing conversation with us. Last week we had the celebration of the legacy of Malcolm X, and this week we have community conversations, a place for everyone. Next week we are continuing our discussion around parent and community engagement, and we're also thinking about what to do with our children during the summer, because as the quarantine lifts, we need to be thinking about their academic issues and begin to really target intervention. And so we will be launching an online academy for our students, and also financial literacy. So stay tuned. We hope to share that on our next webinar, which will take place on June 9th and also on June 10th for those that are listening. I want to give a special thank you to each of my dynamic panel members. I have learned so much. I thank you for your voice. I thank you for your authentic leadership. I wish you well. I ask you to continue to be safe, to take care of yourself, and extend our love to your communities that you serve, and to continue to ask that you have the strength to continue to be courageous in this work as we move forward as a community. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing everyone again on our next community conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick plug for my book. Don't
Sure.
forget,
Oh, yes.
Breaking the Chains of Self-Doubt. I encourage everyone to go buy the book, read it. I'm open for discussion. I'm open to come and have book talks, book read at your place of worship, at your wherever you are. I'm willing to meet with you. So you can get my
And you can
information
find
from
it on
Dr. Selma.
Amazon. They can easily
Awesome.
find it. You go to Amazon, you hit Dr. Skeet, Breaking the Chains. You can order it and purchase it on Amazon very easily. And absolutely. And Dr. Skeet, we can post it on the site, as well as if you want to share. Do you want to share an email as well? We can find you as well online.
Okay, I shall.
Absolutely. We will absolutely post it. And Dr. Martin, you also have a book out. Am I correct?
Yes, but my book is I'm married, but I feel like I'm single.
Yes. Yes.
It's not about my current husband. It's based on my life from my first marriage.
Yes, we have to support each other, and it's great. Like Sister William was saying, you have to read. You have to be able to engage it, and become curious. And this is a great way to do it. I thank everyone again. Many blessings to you, and we'll see you next time on our community conversations with leaders. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good one. Okay.